Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
John, let's just go. Let's
Yeah.
Let's
People
do
can
it.
trickle in.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. It is so good to see you all. We've got so many people coming back. This is really wonderful. This is part of our film series. We've got the wonderful, the amazing Michael Gaspari is going to teach us. Yes, a round of applause. He's going to teach us. Of course. It's going to teach us the basics of DAW. So he's going to walk us through. If you haven't used one before, this will be extremely valuable for you on your journey with the film project. And if you're not doing the film project, it's still going to be very helpful. So,
And I would say, like, even if you have used a DAW before, it would be good to learn, like, how to use it in context with film. Like how to import a film, how to set a tempo map, all that. I'm going to teach all that.
there we go. So I'll get out of the way and we'll get into it.
All right.
Here we go.
Can I turn off lights really quickly?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Cool. This is how you control it?
Yes, you usually press it's the middle two, if I remember correctly. You just press them, and then it takes like a minute, and then they turn off.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, I guess, like, first thing I should sort of ask is, like, maybe go around the room and ask, like, what DAWs are you guys using? Like Logic, Pro Tools, or
I'm a Cubase user.
yeah.
Ooh.
All right. Nice. I want to learn Cubase. That's
It's a good
Mad
one.
respect.
Logic.
use Logic.
Yep.
I know you use Logic.
Yeah.
Use Ableton, right?
Logic, Ableton.
Okay, yeah.
Also Cubase.
Cubase.
Ah, all right.
Two Cubase people.
More Cubase users, eh?
Just
I'm
clapping
not
for the
Logic.
Cubase
Logic.
users.
And your
Pro Tools.
Pro Tools, nice.
Woo!
Good. Yeah. Well, okay. So when it comes to the writing portion, I'll be focusing in Logic, but this will be very similar in a lot of different DAWs. So like this workflow will be pretty similar in like Cubase, Pro Tools, Ableton, whatever. Actually, I don't know. Ableton's a little weird, but but yeah. Okay. So first thing we want to do, right, is let's say we get a film from a client or like a person. We want to figure out, make sure our session is set correctly, because if you don't have your session set correctly, that can cause so many issues down the road that you don't want to have to deal with. So, for example, I have an asset here from a film that I worked on. It was a feature-length film that I worked on with another composer, or two other composers that were from the MSP program here. Feature-length film. It was really cool. So I was assigned to do Reel 5. So this is Reel 5, right? So we open that up. Basically, this is just the this actually has like the temp music of the director. Yeah.
Can you explain like what a reel is?
Yeah, sure. So and this is something I like recently just learned too, but like a reel is basically like in a feature length film, like a reel is like a section of the film that has its own cues. So like in this movie there were five reels. So I was assigned to do reel 5, which was longer than the other reels. And in this was 6 really long, like 3-minute cues that I had to write.
Actually, Dave, maybe you can speak to this, but I'm pretty sure historically the reason they split up films like this is because they could only fit so much film onto something called a reel.
Yes, that's correct.
So in the middle of the film, they'd have to change it out.
Yeah.
So that's how we organize our cue numbers, which is also for anyone doing the festival how the deliverables will be.
Yes.
Using something called an M number.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Okay, so let's first import this into Logic. The first thing we want to figure out is, what type of deliverables does the director want? Usually you're going to find 48K sample rate, right, 24-bit. So, just your standard, like when you're setting up your project, in Logic, you could go to project settings, you could go to synchronization to make sure that your frame rate's correct, which in Logic, if you import a film, it'll ask you if you want to use the film's frame rate. And it's set to 48K, which is what we want. And it is also a 24-bit. So let's literally just go to File, Movie, Open Movie. Right? So then let's go over to, nice. All right, and here's my assets from the director. So I'm going to use this first one. It is in 20, I believe it's in 23.9. Yep. Right. So one thing I always do is I always extract the audio. So open movie and extract audio. Make sure those are both checked. Now here's that message that I was saying. So my session is set to 29.97 frames per second, but we want to use the movie's frame rate. Because if I say keep this, there's going to be audio sync issues. We don't want that, right? So now we got our movie in here. And the other thing that we want to have is the separation of the dialogue and the temp music, right? Because this file here has both, which we don't want. And one thing that they did is that, I don't know if you can see on the channels, but they actually made the dialogue / FX on the left channel and the music on the right channel. So you could actually technically just take these two files and make them mono tracks if you wanted. But honestly, since they gave us the separate audio, it'd be easier to just take these and drag these directly in. So let's do that. Existing tracks, and they are in. And we'll just do this. And then one important thing you want to do is make sure these audio files are SEMD locked. And what did you say? What SEMD stands for? Because I always forget.
That's a great question.
If anyone knows,
Society of Music.
That's right.
It's something.
Music players, yeah, two wheels. Something about
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a way to lock, events in your, project to the grid and to the time code.
I was a little bit close. Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. So that's where they get the
Next. Now, so now we have our whole film. We also have this pre-roll, and in this case, the director asked me to just have beat measure one start at pre-roll. So I did that. But a lot of times they might ask you to do it at basically set your time time code to 5949. And if you do that, that will make it so that literally when the movie starts, it's right after it's like right when the pre-roll ends and right when the actual reel starts.
Assuming you have any pre-roll.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Brendan here. Since we're working with undergraduate filmmakers, a lot of them will not have any pre-roll.
Yeah.
So,
That's fine. Yeah.
but you.
But for this, we don't have to do that. We're not going to worry about that for this. So we have the audio, right? And now we can basically I would just make sure that that your time code is aligned throughout the whole project, right? So it's a long 15-minute reel. So, right? If we see, so it's not, right? And the reason is because I didn't set this project to be 5. That's a thing that you also will probably not find with film projects, because this is reel 5, so we actually make it start at hour 5. So I should show how you do that in Logic. Basically, you can go into synchronization and make bar 1 start at hour 5. And then you can make your movie also start at, if you go to this movie tab, you can make the movie start at hour 5. So there we go. Right? So now, the audio didn't move, which is annoying. So that's something you'd want to do. You want to just import the audio first. That happens. Now it should all be in sync. Yep, that looks good. We already are. Shoot! There we go. Got weird. Logic can be weird sometimes with this. Okay. Yeah, I don't see it.
Because you're in bar 1, you set it to hour 5 then.
I did, yeah.
Then your movie should be at bar 1 instead of hour 5, right?
It's at bar 1. The movie should be, no, the movie starts at hour 5. It's based on time code. Interesting. There we go. Okay, it was the region borders. We're good now. All right.
Don't come any closer. You have to kill me.
You can tell it's all in sync, right? And so now, sometimes one thing you might find with undergraduate, or like, films that you find, you can like, student films, they might have temp music. Maybe it won't be like in the project, but what they might do is like, like reference music. Like I had to do that once for a couple of student films that I've done here, where they'll just give me like a Spotify playlist of just music that they're influenced in, that they want me to like match. And this will always depend on the director, but some directors love the temp music and they want you to write the music like basically exactly like it. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. The good news is that it kind of makes your job a little easier because basically you already kind of have the style and that's something you don't have to think about. You just got to write in the style. But it could also maybe hinder your creativity and also maybe you get into like lawsuit territory if you get too close to the temp. Like if your music's too similar. But again, that's something in the industry that probably don't have to worry about with student films. But anyway, right? If we're gonna start, we're gonna mute that because we don't need it. We just want to hear the dialogue, and it's a weird movie. It's like an Italian horror film, psychological thriller sort of thing. So let's now create a new MIDI track, and I'm going to show you how to use virtual instruments because it's a little bit different than your standard MIDI tracks. So I have one here. I have an empty instrument. So let's open up, I use East West, so I'm going to open up East West. So we're going to East West, Opus. Now you see this mono, stereo, 5.1, and then what's called multi-outputs. That's what you're going to want to use when you have multiple instruments. Because if you don't use that and you just have stereo, that means you would have to have one instance of Opus or like Contact or whatever for each instrument, which can be very CPU intensive, and depending on like the stats of your computer, it could be an issue. So what we like to do is use a multi-output. Opus has 9 stereo. I know Contact has like 16 stereo, which is really nice. But anyway, that's how you do it. I have sounds loaded on my SSD here. So let's just like add a couple instruments. Let's like pretend I'm like, okay, the director wants strings. So let me just get like a string patch on or something. We'll just do like a full strings or something. I think this adds like 4. Yeah, this adds a bunch of doesn't add first violin, so let's add a first violin patch in there too. Great. So then what you're going to want to do, and this is the same in Contact and other libraries or players, you want to make sure that you have, first of all, that you can see the other multi-out tracks. And the way you do that is you go down here and you click on this little plus button, right? Is it easy to see, you guys? Right, so you click this. So we have 5 tracks, right? This is my first one, this is my second, so let's make 3 more because we have 5, right? And you see how it says Opus, then Opus 3/4, Opus 5/6, Opus 7/8, Opus 9/10, right? That is what we want to set these to be. So 3/4, 5/6, 7/8, and 9/10. And then there's also your MIDI channels. This you want to make also separate, because if you have, let's say you have them all on Omni or Multi or something, then you're going to have issues where no matter what track you select, it's going to play all the sounds at once, and you don't want that. So set them all to individual channels. So I usually just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So then what we can do is just make sure that the tracks, are seen also in our, in our main, player and stuff. So the way you can do that in Logic, because it doesn't automatically do it in Logic, you could just right-click on the tracks and just press Create Track. So now we have all these tracks, and we can call it Violin 1, right? Violin 2, and viola, cello, and bass. Okay, so now if I one thing you're gonna also wanna do is make sure that the MIDI out channels are set correctly, and usually it automatically does this. 2, 3, 4, 5. That is all correct. So when I'm gonna put up musical typing, when I play this, I should hear violins and only the violins. Right? Violin 2 is gonna be slightly different. Or not. Let's see what's wrong. 3, 4, 2, that should be correct. Oh, these are weird patches, that's why. Okay, it was a range thing. They should be working. So let's yep, they're working. I never use those. I always import them individually, but for this I wanted to do it more quicker. So yeah. Those are violas. Let's play the cellos. Yeah, because I think what those were meant for is that they are meant to be played on one track and you just like play it on full keyboard. But I don't like to work that way. I always like to have everything individually. And that's our base. So we have our session now and it's working. And next thing I want to talk about is tempo mapping. So there is a very easy way to do this in Logic, and Pro Tools has a very similar workflow to this, with like, Command I to like insert bars and stuff. In Logic, there is something called beat mapping, which you could show in the global tracks. So what I'm doing is I'm right clicking and then just showing and / hiding all of these things. So I'd like to have my markers, my movie, signature, tempo, and beat mapping up. So let's just like put like a moment in this film. There's a really weird moment in this film where she like screams. It like with a weird demonic scream. So let's say I wanna have a moment there where like there's a big hit, to emphasize that. So let's zoom in, right? And let's play through the movie. This also the assets for this. The audio is not finished. The audio is terrible.
Times change. I found myself.
And yeah, it's really bad. Yeah, the audio is terrible. Okay, but that's the moment. So I'm sure they fixed it. I'm sure this audio was from like March, and I started working on this in August. But anyway, so one easy way to do this is that you could literally go frame by frame, right? And literally just like kind of nudge it and kind of find a moment, maybe like here. So I guess like at 8. Let's make that our hit. So easy enough. In Logic, you just press this little plus button with marker to make a new marker. Girl screams, right? So now let's say our tempo is I don't know, at like 100, right? And maybe we want, we have these 3 bars of like tempo of 100, but we want this to hit right on the downbeat, right? Let's actually make that a little slower so that I can show you. Oh, actually, one thing I should tell you that I almost forgot. It's easy to forget this. You have to lock your markers to the time code, so also SEMD lock them. Because if you don't do that, then they will not move based on the MIDI, or they will literally stay, where they are based on the measure, but not on the time code, which would be an issue. So now if we drag this, you see how this moved with the film, and it's still at 1:14:08, right? So let's move this here. Right? You can do that manually, but as you can see, it's not hitting exactly on measure 38. So what you can do is you can select this, and then in beat mapping, you can take this little marker here, drag it over, and now it makes an anchor where it changed our tempo to 111.8. And that's something that you should definitely get used to in film scoring, is that you are going to have tempos, if you're making like a tempo map like this, that have like decimals in them, and that's okay. Yeah.
For instance, when we're doing something like scores for the silver screen, and it may not be the most practical to have live musicians doing like a 111.8, what do you recommend as a workaround for that, for ease of practicality?
I can actually, and maybe Dave can speak to this as well because he's going to be our conductor. Actually, there should be no limitation when it comes to 11.8 or any sort of decimal. It really won't matter. But
Because they're playing to a click track.
no, they are not. That's the only thing. In the recording session, they will be playing to a click track, but in the performance, they'll be playing to punches and streamers. So the one thing that I would say to our composers who are listening is this is absolutely follow what Michael is saying, but maybe minimize your tempo changes. It becomes very difficult if, and we've had this in years past, myself, I've had difficulties with this in my own work. If you jump from 60 to 90 to 45.9 to 129.6, all in a few measures, it's going to be virtually impossible for the musicians to keep up with Dave, our conductor.
That's what I was gonna say, really, really quick on that. With that, it's totally okay to have like, 101.11154, whatever. But for the actual score, you can just round it up. Cause like,
Yes.
I'm not gonna be doing it and be like, well, actually, we were doing 101 instead of 102, so you gotta go back.
And there actually is like, I'm sure David will talk about it more, but there is like a standard to like writing tempo changes in film scores specifically, which is like if you have like really small increments where it's like maybe every measure it's like increasing like 1 BPM, you would just write +1.
Right.
You wouldn't have to write quarter note equals 112, 113,
Right. Please don't do that.
Yeah, that would be too much to read. Yeah.
And that is more doable in terms of if you have a lot of tempo changes. And also, when it comes to notation, that's something we'll cover in our masterclass next week.
Not next week, the week after.
Oh, the week after.
Next week is self-control concert number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll come to that, but and then also come to the next thing the week after.
Okay.
My bad.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. But anyway, that's a marker, right? And now it's perfectly on the beat, right? That's what we want. Weird audio choice. I don't know what they were thinking there. But anyway, so that's basically like your basics of how to tempo map, how to organize your virtual instruments, right? So now I'm going to actually go to a finished version of this view that I have, and I'm going to show it to you. So we're not going to save this. Or should I save this? So I can show it. So I can like send it to people. Would that be beneficial?
It has some potential. I don't know.
Just say we can decide later.
Okay, I'll save it for now. Yeah. Film score.
That's the title on the quality.
Oh yeah, and one thing actually, this is important. Actually, it's good I'm doing this. When you save these, you want to make sure that in your sessions, especially if you're going to like share your sessions to people and stuff, make sure that you check both audio files and movie files, right? Because you want to make sure that your movie file is embedded in your session. Because if it's not, that could cause issues in your sharing.
Also, the folder radio button, right?
Yeah, the folder radio button. Packages do work, but not all the time. So I would I'd rather always do folders because first of all, I need to be able to like see my audio files. If it's a package, it's literally just like a logic file. It's like a compressed file. Anyway, I saved this. Consider maybe using it. All right. Now I'm going to open up one of the sessions that I did for this project. You're going to see a very interesting folder of just logic sessions in a second. This is how much it took to this and get the scores. But anyway, so because it's pretty simple. It only has 2 tempo changes and the instrumentation's fine. So obviously when you have big files like this, sometimes it takes a little second to load. So you gotta let all the samples load in. That can be a little bit of a pain, but as long as you have your handy dandy, if you have your samples on an external drive, once they're loaded in, they're in your RAM. So, right? So this basically, I had the session start at 5:01:59 because that's when Q2 starts. And yeah, but like I would recommend, I don't know, with your film scores, like for like, I don't know, like 15-minute short film, I'd recommend just doing that in one session. I think it would be, easier, and you won't have to like worry about all the different time frame rates.
Yeah, most of our films for this are going to be between 1 and 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, then definitely
Short
don't do
film.
multiple sessions.
Yeah.
Like literally, you will be writing like one cue, basically, maybe two, but yeah. Alright, cool. So, these are still loading in, but this is my session, right? And I basically have everything organized. I can show you in the mixer. Right? I have Opus, 3, 4, and I kind of like to always organize it by like families of instruments and stuff. So like I have my woodwinds here and my brass. But I also have a bunch of different brass sounds. So I actually have like one thing that's specifically for French horn sounds because I have all these different timbres that I wanted to use, like stopped horn, stuff like that. So this is like how I built a session, and my workflow is usually I tempo map first, and then I build my instrumentation, and then I start composing.
Can you tell us what a tempo map is for those who don't know?
Yes, a tempo map is basically from start to finish the different tempo changes that are happening throughout your project and time signature changes. Because look, I have this is in 6/8, but then I have this one 9/8 measure, and that's because I wanted it to hit this moment where this detective gets into the car and slams the door and starts driving away. And the easiest way to do that was to add 3 extra beats. And I only have one tempo change on, so I have 104 or 105. We'll run that too, and then 113. So yeah, and this is actually something really important that I'm going to teach you guys, because right now I'm going to teach you guys how to export your stems and your 2 mixes for Pro Tools. So what instrumentations are they like writing for?
So one of each wind, horn, trumpet, and one of each string, and then pending also a cajon player. But not sure about that. Yeah, I know. New this year.
Oh,
Exciting stuff, but we'll see.
That's cool. So this is all going to be one session?
And with also including saxophone.
Yes.
Nice. That's gonna be cool. You guys get that. But this could all be like one session or separate sessions.
Yes, one
All
session.
one session.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So let's say you have maybe like a lot of like percussion. You get like taiko or drums or like some sort of or like a lot of synths and stuff. That would be something that you would want to export into your 2 mix, so the musicians can hear that. They can hear that as well as your click track, but you're going to want your click track to be a separate stem. But we're not going to make that in Logic or Cubase or anything. You're going to want to make that in Pro Tools. So I actually have stems ready for this because I had a session for this where we recorded strings. So
Michael, what's the sound?
Oh yeah. I know, yeah. A stem is basically a set of a grouping or maybe even just like one track of your entire track that's bounced to audio. And the important thing about stems is that when you're exporting, you want to make sure that they're all starting and ending, at the same time, because if you have because you can see here that the flutes start a little later and like the.
Could you play this one just so we have an idea?
Yeah. I'll play. Let me play. I'll put
Maybe like
my
one
real.
separate and then put it in the context.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll play the strings. These were the live recorded strings that we had. So these are stems. So I have these soloed right now. Right. You just hear pizzicato's bass right now. Let's skip it a little bit. Right? So let's put that into context now. I'm going to play it from. Right, so this is like sort of detective music. You want to one cool thing that I did is one cool thing that I did with it was actually I mixed the live strings with the MIDI strings. And what's cool is that because we only had a certain amount of musicians to work with, that's actually a really good technique because it basically makes it sound more realistic while also making it sound like you had a really big orchestra to work with.
So ideally for this festival, you're going to want to write a score which probably we're not going to be playing anything outside of what's being played by the orchestra through the speakers or anything, since they won't have headphones to hear it. However, since we'll have this recording session and you all be given recordings after the fact, you are at that point welcome to incorporate what we record with whatever you have in your DAW or whatever instruments you have, and then work with the director to put that into the
accent, because who knows, maybe the director wants it to be more electronic, and obviously, working with a director, you want to, their opinion's the most important,
Sure.
So yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. So I know that obviously you want to work in what you guys have access to based on this. All right, so I'm going to now grab my stems, right, and I'm going to quit Logic because I don't like to have two DAWs open at the same time. And we're going to open up Pro Tools. All right, so let's open that up, and while that's opening, I'm going to go over to I organized this. Very well. Okay, so Q2, right? I have my these are the stems actually I delivered to the director, but we're actually going to go to our tune mix of. Oh yeah. I remember this. Okay, so we're gonna do my two mix of without the strings because we're gonna say in this example we're recording strings, right? So I already have this bounced, and we're gonna import this in Pro Tools. Oh, and I should probably explain how to do that. So in Logic, the easiest way to do that is literally just set a cycle range right of the start and finish, and then just mute the strings. Literally just mute the strings tracks and bounce it, and that will create a two mix without. Okay, that's a cool update to Pro Tools. I never saw that before. I just updated it today. Anyway, okay, yeah, because they have Sketch now. It's like trying to be Ableton. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're gonna call this recording stems test. Right. Let's make sure our project settings are the same. 48K, 24-bit. Interleave, for some reason, is not automatically checked. Make sure to check that because if you don't check that, your files will be separate, like left and right mono panned. And you want it when you have stereo tracks, you just want to have them all interleave. Right, so let's and then just save it into a location. I'm going to save it in my Pro Tools session folder. Right, and let's create. So, right, command equals will let you switch between the mix and the edit window. So right, we have our click track. Now for recording sessions, and this is something I learned, that we both in Carlos and Paulie's class. For your click track, there's actually a standard for what the click should sound like. And the Pro Tools Click plugin has it. So it's called, if you go into Classic, it's called UREI the click. So for the accent, you want to do the accented one, and for the the other one you just want to do regular click, right? So if we listen to that, it sounds like. Okay, I'm just make sure that looks great. Yeah, it's gonna play through my microphone. I don't know why it does that. Okay. It's so weird. Yeah.
So you can do all these things, but
right? So that's what the click should be sounding like. And the reason for that is because it's less likely to bleed through the headphones of the musicians. Because if you have headphone bleed, with that could be a pain to edit. Especially if you're playing like a really quiet, like lush piece, and then suddenly you're in the background, that just ruins it, right? Now, one other thing that I also exported was the the MIDI file, right? So the same idea. In Logic, you can set your cycle range and just export literally a MIDI file that goes from the start to the end of your cue. So I have this one here. We drag this in. This will give us our tempo map. So let's there, all of that. I always like to have this open because then you can just drag it right in here and put it in session start. When you do that, when you import a MIDI track, just make sure you check this that says import tempo for map from MIDI file. And then it also imports all the tracks, but we do not need those, so let's hide and make it active because we don't need the MIDI. And with tempo, now you can see I have my tempo changed, and that is good. This is a good click. Oh, this is an interesting thing. Sometimes in Pro Tools, if you have 680, you have to change meter, right? Let's show the meter. Sometimes when you have 680, it like sets it for some reason to a quarter note click, but you wanted to have be an eighth note for that because 6/8 is 1, 2, 1. Yeah. So now it should, right? Right? Now I always do that first. I always import the tempo map before I import the audio. For me, it feels better to do it that way. And so now let's import 2mix, right? This is the 2mix without the strings. Because most likely the musicians during the recording session are not going to want to hear the beat that they're playing to. But if they do, you can also export a version of just the strings. So I have that in case they're like, can we hear our part back? That might happen, you know? So I have a version that's just the strings. Right? So now we have our set, our stems, right? So we can play these. Okay. So now what we can do is we can take the click. I hate this thing in Pro Tools. What is that showing? So we're gonna make that show. But what you could do, okay, it's like that. But okay. Anyway, what you want to do is you actually want to commit your click to audio, because then you can have it, you know, as an audio track. And see if it works that. Yeah, it did it. It added a lot of extra stuff which we don't need, so we just.
Which is important because that'll be one of your
That's why. Okay,
deliverables.
I got it.
By the way, you'll need to submit a click track. So follow
Yes.
these steps.
Right, so now we have this click track. We can just mute this. We don't need it anymore. Right now, there is also a thing in. Let's say you have a piece that has a bunch of different sections to it. It has a slow section and then like a really fast section, and maybe the, you know, for the performance, you know, obviously if you guys want to maybe do tempo changes like this, but let's say you have one, for you know, the film you're recording. What you can do is you can actually split your view into references. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. So let's say I want to have a change, a new reference here at the tempo change, because maybe you know, I want to have a fresh start there. It's a new section, you know. So zoom in. You can use R and T to zoom in and out. Right, and literally what you can do is just duplicate the strings, right? So like what I also like to do is rename this, right? So click A, and then let's call this 2mix A, right? So let's take these two tracks, duplicate them, and yeah, that's fine. Right, so now we have it duplicated also the audio files, right? So now what we can do is we can say, okay, this reference is going to end at measure 19. So click track, right? And then, to be fancy, you can do a little fade out, right? So the players will stop at measure 19, right? That'll be our first reference. And then the second reference, we will have the click start here, which I actually forgot to do the to make this into eighth notes, but for this example, no worries. Anyway, so we want this to start here. Now, the players start on measure 19, but our click track has and the music. If we don't have a click to start, it would literally just start playing, and the musicians would be like, "Oh, where do we start playing?" So, what you want to do is you actually want to edit the click track audio, and literally basically separate. Okay. I like exit Pro Tools, but yeah.
Command
Command E. Okay.
It's not working.
Command T.
I usually just see separate right here. Yeah, right there. I usually have to just do that. I did update Pro Tools today, so maybe it's being weird. Anyway, so what you would do basically is what you would want to do is separate this maybe from here and then like add that measure beforehand to it before, because the tempo change, right? Because you can't I don't know, you could do this, but that might be confusing because it's counting off at a different tempo, right? Right, that would be a really awkward change for the musicians to start playing to. So what you would want to do is, if this is working, I can actually separate, was take this.
Isn't it that slow?
I don't think so. I've always done it on grid. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna do this. This looked like it was working fine. It just separated them multiple times. Right, then you can option click and then just there's a key line that go to the go to here as well, where you can have like the end of the clip. But for now, I'll just slip it. Okay. So, all right, then you want to mute these, right? Yeah, but this, I mean, obviously this would have been 8 notes if I did that correctly. Anyway, so now we got our 2 different references. So now in this queue, it is easy for us to be like, all right, let's do section reference 1. All right, now let's move on to reference 2. So you don't have to tell the engineer to be like, oh, can we start at measure 19? Okay, let's look for 19. Okay, yes. Instead, you could say, let's start at reference B. And then, and also you want to make sure these are named correctly, right? So click B and 2 links B. One thing I also like to do is I like to make them different colors. So let's make this red, and then make this one yellow. Right? Just makes it easier for the engineer and stuff. So now you have your session, and biggest thing in Pro Tools, this is really important. So when we're saving our project, we want to make sure that all these assets are there. So what you do is you go to File, Save, Session, Copy In. That's new. Save, Copy In is usually what it is. And basically you want to check the audio files, and well, actually you don't need to check the movie files for this because you don't have any movie files. Right, so you have to check the audio files folder, and actually, you know what I should do before that? We should also consolidate the clips. So you see how these don't start at the session start? That could be an issue if, let's say, like this got nudged over, by accident. Now we have to figure out where it starts. That could be an issue, right? Oh, does it start here? We don't want that. So what we want to do is literally just take the all the tracks and just consolidate them. So So we go to consolidate clip, and now they all start at 0, at measure 1. Right. Cool. So now let's go to file, save session copy in audio files, and then let's just save it as I would say film score rec. I would recommend you guys write the word rec in it so we know that this is like the session we're recording on. Just easy for the engineer and all that.
We'll be in the naming convention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys will have,
We'll make that clear.
yeah, you guys will do your own thing, but I know in our media scoring class last year, we were told to do this. And I was told to do this for this project actually too. So, right, now I'm not gonna save it because we don't need to, but yeah, that's what you would wanna do. And I think that covered mostly everything. I mean, with the workflow kind of from start to finish, this is all the basic stuff. I didn't obviously talk about the composing, but that's like the creative part, This was more about like the technical side of things,
So if you guys don't know already, Michael is our recording engineer, so all of your deliverables are going to be sent to him. I assume you're going to expect a Pro Tools session from everybody.
I'm gonna expect a Pro Tools session because in weeks, we're gonna do it in weeks. Pro Tools is like the main DAW that runs that studio. They have Logic, but it doesn't work as well.
In professional spheres, that's the expectation. But for recording,
and also that's really important because we're going to be doing like all your cues. So like I wouldn't want to have to switch to Logic in the middle of the session because that could cause like issues. So I think the biggest things are 48K, right? 48K sample rate, and 24-bit. Just make sure all your Pro Tools sessions are set to that, and then just make sure that your measures are also aligned with the score. So because we've had issues in the past with the film scoring projects, where people have had scores that are like measure 18 in the score is measure 19 in the Pro Tools session, and then suddenly we're like, all right, everyone, let's go to measure 18, but that's 19 for you. It just becomes a mess. Yeah.
Michael, there's one last thing. I know we skipped over this, but you talked a little bit about it. Is there any chance that you can demonstrate the process of delineating your stems, exporting that with the MIDI? And
I forgot to do that because I was like, I had the repair of it. And I was trying to make sure I was doing stuff on time. Yeah, I'll do that real quickly. Let's close session.
So these are once you have your music, this is the steps you're going to follow to create the Pro Tools session.
Yeah. So let's go back into the Logic session. I'm going to show you how to do both audio and the MIDI tempo map because that's really important. If you don't import your tempo map, your click is going to be completely off in Pro Tools, and then it's basically useless for the conductor at that point. So Pro Tools notifications. Nice. I was learning a lot about Pro Tools today just from the update because for some reason I guess Separate doesn't work anymore. I don't know because I've never had an issue with that before. All right. Anyway, okay. So we're back into this session again, right? So the thing that I like to do when I'm exporting a MIDI, tempo map is I like to make a empty MIDI track where I just have a note play that holds from the start to the finish. Because if you don't have a note at the start of your set where you want the MIDI to start, it will start it like a lot of times, like maybe on like the first time there's a MIDI note, and that could be a problem. That could be problematic. Yeah, I know people don't think about that a lot. Yeah, and I've made that mistake too. So I just want to help you guys out, make sure you guys don't make that mistake. It's easy to overlook. So what I do is I just draw a little note that's not whatever, right? And I just take it and drag it. Right? Now it is there, and to do this in Logic, you go to File, Export, Selection as MIDI file. And honestly, you don't even have to export all your MIDI tracks. You can literally just export this track and it'll export the tempo, your time signatures, and your markers.
And it does it based off of the range. you
The range,
select at the top.
Yeah, and just for safety, I always put the cycle on too, so I can do that. So selection as lead file, right? And we'll just call this copy. I've already done this before. And yep, that's perfect. All right, so now we have that file here. There it is. You know, if you open it, it's not going to do anything, but if you drag it into Pro Tools, it's going to give your like I showed you before when I dragged it in, it added tempo map and all that. So then if you want to take your audio, like I was saying before, the easiest way to do this is literally anything that you're not going to record. So like, you know, big percussion or like synths and stuff like that, that you want the musicians to hear while they're playing, you would want to have. So what you would do in that case is you could just mute all the other you know, instruments. So like, okay, we're recording woodwinds, we're not recording percussion, we're recording the strings, so we'll mute the strings. And that's handy. It's handy to have like folders in Logic, makes it easier to do that. But also one thing that you might want to do is, let's say you just want to have your stems available. And I think for this project, that's going to be the way you're going to want to work, because we're recording everything at once. So actually, I'm going to show you it that way. So I'm going to close all my folders, right? So, right, these are my stems right here. Right, so we got brass and woodwinds. I actually bunched those together. Percussion, synths, FX, plucked strings, bass, and strings. And the reason I actually have them organized this way was because the director wanted them this way. But you could do it any way you want. That makes sense to you. So what you do is then you select them all, make sure cycle is on from start to finish. You go to export 7 tracks as audio files, or you can do Command E, right? So now you can go in, and one cool thing in Logic is that you can actually name them. So you can have like 01, 02, and then maybe like, I don't know, the movie, like with customs, you can say like Art of Diversion. That's the name of the movie, right? So 01, brass plus woodwinds, Art of Diversion, right? That just makes it, you know, and they're going to give you the naming scheme, so that will be an easy way for you guys to like not have to type in your naming scheme every single time, you know? But anyway, so I'm just going to export those into that folder and see if they export. Oh wait, they probably didn't yet, because they have to. Or Logic crashes. That's fun. I think Logic crashed. That's fine. That's fine. Anyway, I've already done this before. Let's quit Logic because it decided to be a bad little boy. And I'll show you what they would look like if they bounced, because I actually have done this already. Oh, they're corrupted. The files are corrupted. That's fine. Move to trash. All right. Here's what they all are. The stems. Here's my stems. So I have, you know, the entire project. So this is everything at once. So with that, you can just bounce in place, or bounce the entire project. But now we have just our percussion, for example. Okay. Maybe we have our synths, right? Okay. So, does anyone have any questions about that? Or honestly, does anyone just have any questions about anything that I've talked about? Yeah.
So for you as the recording engineer, what stems do you require to? And generally, my understanding is that stems are made for the purpose of working with a mixing engineer, right?
Yes.
So that they don't have to cipher through every single instrument and articulation that you
Yeah.
have, that they're grouped together for the sake of just mixing things together.
Yeah, no, what I'd rather see for this is a 2 mix. A 2 mix and of anything that's not being recorded.
Okay, so that's good to know.
That's good to
So,
know, yeah. And that's what you'll see usually in like the real world.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
so basically bounce everything, is that fair to say?
I would say bounce anything that's not being recorded. So like don't bounce like, so your guys are recording woodwinds, brass, and strings, right?
Yeah.
So don't bounce those. Don't bounce those together, bounce them as a extra reference.
And since we're not playing anything through the speakers, I would be extremely conservative about that. If you have anything that you want to be played in addition to the orchestral courses that we're going to have available, then it's not going to show up in the concert because it's not going to be played through the speakers. So if that is something that you still want regardless for after the fact and working with your director, that's totally fine and we can have it ready for the session. You just have to have the steps ready for it.
Exactly. And what I'm thinking for this, because this is very different from like when you just like have a string session and like just a brass session, because we're doing it all at once. I think because I think that's what I was trying to think like what we should have, and I'm thinking actually what you should do is just separate each section as a stem. So woodwinds, brass, strings, and then just anything else as its own stem.
Might be
Because-
nice.
Because I think in that case, the instrumentalists are gonna want to hear the parts, because if they don't hear anything, it'll just be good to have. But the click track's gonna be the most important in this case, because if let's say you just write for woodwinds, brass, and strings.
When we start the actual festival and have our introduction meeting, we'll make all this very clear. We'll have
Yeah.
the steps lined out.
I think this is something we still definitely have to like figure out, because
Again, first year with the recording session, so bear with
yeah,
us.
yeah.
It's gonna be great.
I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, but I know this is a lot of information. Like, trust me, this is like trust me, you will make mistakes. It will happen, But I wanted to provide all this information to you to make sure that you make as little mistakes as possible, But like again, you're here to learn, this is like a space where that's allowed, Like we'll work with it,
Yeah.
And
We're here to work with you. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Michael too.
I'm excited to be your engineer. I'm really excited to.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. This is so fantastic, and we'll see you next time. We have our first open call concert of the entire year, so please come support your colleagues. If you're not on it, please come out there. It's in Dustman. It's going to be really nice. It's going to be really fun. We've got a nice full program. So come to that. That's next Friday, the 29th at 7:30 in Dustman Hall. And then the week after that, we will have the third part of this series, which is basically the sheet music side of it. And that's going to be me and Brendan talking about that and getting your scores looking nice and professional and all that
All the
good.
standards.
All that good stuff. So it's going to be really fun. So we hope to see you then, and reach out and if you have any questions. Okay, see you later. Bye.
If you want to ask me any questions, I'll hang for a little bit.